Hello, folks. Back with ancient cosmography. So, basically, I got through all the really easily identifiable um, avatars in the Hierakonpolis Tomb 100 map. Um, none of the avatars are super easily identifiable because they're less kind of realist than the later kind of avatars in the Book of Two Ways, at least the Book of Two Ways of Seppi, which I'm most familiar with. But so we kind of just got to wing it a bit and just go based on where they are on the map. So this, seems to be, or I'm thinking this is Sumatra. So, because it's on the right place on the map, it's just seems to be, just southwest of Malaysia, the Malaysian peninsula, which I think is this part right there. And so I think, this would be his head. And then this part would probably be right here where it kind of dips down. This part would probably be right here. And then this part here, guess it would be this. Yeah, that part is certainly less obvious and arguably doesn't fit as well. Unless somehow this is actually this, and this whole thing is just subsumed into that part. And then maybe the legs are like this, like the Bangka Island or whatever there. So yeah, hard to know exactly, but I'm certainly leaning towards this. Also because this is one of the largest avatars in the area, and this is one of the largest islands in the area. And I should correct myself. Like in an earlier video, I said that some of these islands are like 10 times the size of Britain, like Sumatra and Kalimantan and stuff, and Papua. But I actually checked, and it's not quite so extreme. Like, I think most of them are bigger than Britain, but not by so much. Maybe just twice the size or less. But for some reason, Britain is just rendered super small on the Book of Two Ways of Jehudi Hotep of 4,000 years ago. So this is the 5,500-year-old Egyptian map. And so, so here it is right there. Like, here seems to be Australia. And so I think like this, orangish part, whatever, is probably Australia. And so this part right here might actually be connected to, they just push together everything that's southern, they just attach to Antarctica in this map. So they seem to attach Australia to Antarctica, and they attach Africa to Antarctica and some other stuff. So I think this line connecting that might be symbolic, whereas this part just to the right of that line, it seems to fit very well with Cape York. And then this part here fits pretty well with like this area where like Coburg Peninsula and this other stuff are. And so yeah, I think that this guy here is Papua, and with the black part behind his head signifying this huge gulf or bay or whatever behind the Bird's Head Peninsula, and the kind of ear coming off of that, or horn or whatever that is, signifying this little island that's like virtually attached there. And then this guy is New Zealand with his head is Stewart Island here. Or it could be a female, but their head is Stewart Island, and their torso here is South Island of New Zealand, and their legs are the North Island, and the longer peninsula, Waihopa, or I forget what it's called, but that's like this bigger leg on the left, and then the smaller peninsula with the little island at the end of it is like the thinner leg on the right here. And then I'm pretty sure that actually I think I've identified these as well, but that comparison hasn't uploaded yet to the my Google Photos so that I can put it on my laptop, so I'll show that later. But basically I think that this guy here is Java. I could be wrong. I'm not exactly sure what that dot in front of his head would be, though. So I'm not totally sure, but I'm leaning towards this being Java, or at least that's my best working theory right now. And then this being the Philippines, and this being Kalimantan. Kalimantan being an Indonesian island. So, hopefully this is... Oh, actually, I did put it in there, so there's, I put in Kalimantan. Although, no, I think this was the one I put it this way, but it's probably, this was an early iteration, so later I put one that's flipped around, not like retrograde, but like basically upside down from this. So yeah, I think I put it at the wrong orientation there, but it's because I think really the nose is like this peninsula sticking out here, so he's really upside down, and like his front legs are really like this peninsula there, and this back part that kind of slopes up is probably this part right here. So yeah, the better comparisons are still like slowly uploading, I guess. So yeah, fleshing it out a bit better. And same with with this, I basically had already determined that he probably represents Taiwan. His scythe probably represents Penghu, and his oar probably represents Leizhou and Hainan. But but this, I just did a kind of a new comparison to really illustrate it better, because it really is, just like the later books of Two Ways, it zooms in on certain aspects. It focuses on certain aspects. So the the kind of, his face, which is like the furthest south, probably part of Taiwan, this peninsula here, which I zoomed in and changed the angle slightly. But that's his face, so that's why he has a large lip that's kind of hanging down, and then he has a kind of perky nose that sticks up, and a round head. And so, yeah, that would be this peninsula. I'm not sure or I forget what it's called, but this would be his lip there. And then this is his perky nose that sticks up in the air. And, he's got, I guess, one of those kind of really ski jump noses. And then his round head is just this part right here. And then a lot of the rest of this is kind of stylized in there. And he might even have a real eye, because his eye could be like this part right here, whatever that is, if it's a lake or something. So I'm not sure if he represented kind of the Grim Reaper. He might have been the original Grim Reaper, since he's somewhat near the division between the, two worlds, Afro-Eurasia and America. And he's on the boat. He's part of the overall boat that includes like the, basically Japan and all the islands basically between Siberia and Southeast Asia. From Siberia, from the Kuril Islands to Taiwan, to Hainan. So it's pretty much, that boat encompasses most of the East Asian islands. And then he has like a big square butt that I think represents, I zoomed it in a bit, but there is basically that shape at the end, at the other side of Taiwan, this kind of squarish shape that sticks out there. And for his legs, I'm not quite as sure, if they are meant to be super specific features, or if they're largely symbolic, or mostly or entirely symbolic. But this was one of the peninsulas I did find around that area that could match for something in here, for one of his legs or something, perhaps. It's kind of indeterminate enough. I might do a version without this, just since I'm not really sure about that. But I am pretty sure that his arm, or at least one of his arms, would have to be this part right here, which is kind of a slight peninsula and, sea mounts that point towards Penghu, which would be the blade of the scythe. And yeah, the staff of the scythe of the Reaper thing is, I think, purely symbolic, pretty much, but certainly the blade, it has this pointy shape of the Penghu archipelago there, which is immediately, west of Taiwan. It's right between Taiwan and mainland China. So that's the real impediment. If you're sailing along the coast, you got to navigate your way through Penghu without getting harvested by this guy. So, and then, so then this is, this thing seems to be especially stylized because Lei Zhou is not all that long and it's not all that skinny. But Hainan, at least they got the shape of Hainan pretty well. If this was just a regular feature on these boats, on these cosmological boats, then I might just say, oh, it's just a symbolic, but the fact is that this is only on this boat. There's a bunch of these cosmological boats on this map, and only this one has this feature, so that's why I suspect that it represents Hainan and Leizhou, and plus it just fits perfectly. Like, it even has this kind of pointy shape at this end. I mean, the shape is pretty exact, like, of this. Like, you know, even the exact contours of, like, this one sloping at more of a long angle like this, and then this side coming around at a sharper angle, and, you know, this kind of almost diamond shape or octagon shape. So anyway, that one's pretty good. And so yeah, maybe I'll do one like this, but without the legs, since I'm less sure about the legs. And try to configure the rest of it a little better. But, you know, at least now you can really see the face and see why it was depicted that way. And so, you know, here's how it is just regularly. So that's that peninsula, which is the face. You know, this is the big square butt. This is Penghu, and this is the little kind of like peninsula and seamounts that point towards Penghu. And so yeah, this is China, mainland China right here. And see this, I was talking last time about how this this painting from Sulawesi, Indonesia, is like 45,000 years old, and or maybe older, but it seems to be at least 45,000 years old. It's said to be the oldest cave painting in the world, or the oldest painting in the world potentially. And it seems to have kind of the origin of these Heka staves, where in this version the Heka staff is quite realist, where it really seems to have a very specific shape, and it seems to be one of the island chains around around Sulawesi, or around Papua, or around that area, which there are many of. And then these ones, you know, this is showing the Faroe Islands and the and Shetland, and they have similar ones, but in this case, instead of forming it as the exact shape of what it's showing, they just had a standardized type of Heka staff where it just, you know, it's just symbolizing that there's a bunch of little islands and impediments and whatever in that area, without showing their exact shape. And then this is a later, you know, dynastic Egyptian depiction of a god or whatnot with a Heka staff. And so yeah, I think it just became standardized. But I do think it probably traces back to this tradition, this 45,000-year-old tradition, because it seems to always represent, or often, certainly in this case, in the 5,500-year-old map, which is kind of the oldest Egyptian pharaonic tomb, you could say, or proto-pharaonic or something. It uses these in the same way that this, you know, to represent basically what this represents in this ancient map, or this, you know, Paleolithic map. I don't even